All right, so we'll start with this fresh chapter called as signal transduction. Okay, so what was found out is that the cells are highly responsive, you can say sensitive, highly responsive or sensitive to signals or stimuli from their environment. Okay, they are highly responsive, they are highly sensitive to signals or stimuli originating from the environment, from the surrounding environment. So if I have to give some examples, for example, all of you must have seen or not seen, you must have read that, movement of bacteria in response to nutrients. Movement of bacteria, sometimes bacteria move towards the nutrient, particular class of nutrient, or sometimes the bacteria have a tendency to move away from certain class of nutrients. But the fact is, they show movement in response to presence of certain types of nutrients. We'll come to that little later, whether they move towards or they move away from the nutrient. So movement of bacteria. Second example is perception of light by rod cells in the retina of your eyes. That you can perceive light, not only you can perceive light, but you are able to differentiate different colors. For example, on the screen right now, you have three colors being shown. You have blue color, you have written letters or words written in yellow color, and you have annotations done in orange color. So this color perception is also done by cells present in your eyes. So that is also an example of cells responsiveness, sensitiveness towards signals or stimuli coming from the environment. Similarly, as and when you feel hungry, fuel molecules are released from the stores, and their release is mediated by hormones. In response to hunger, hormones will mediate release of fuel molecules in your cells so that energy can be provided. So all these are examples of what? All these are examples of that cells are highly responsive or sensitive to signals or stimuli from their environment. So this sensing of signals or stimuli, their processing, the signals are processed. It is mediated by what are called as signal transduction pathways. Signal transduction pathways. So you have a good number of these kinds of signal transduction pathways, and we'll try and understand a few of them. This signal transduction pathway, typical signal transduction pathway, it is composed of what? These are the components of signal transduction pathways. What are the components of signal transduction pathways? They are made up of receptors. Receptors are located on the plasma membrane. You have enzymes involved in it. You have channels. We have already learned, we have already studied about channels and pumps. So these are the components of signal transduction pathways. And the fourth component is regulatory proteins. So it's a very organized structure. It's a very organized assembly, signal transduction pathway, typical signal transduction pathway. And what is its job? Its job is to detect the signal, process it, and amplify it. Right? Not only it detects, it processes it, and then amplify the signal, and then transmit it to the transmit it so that necessary action can be initiated in response to the signal. So this is signal transduction. What is meant by signal transduction? Let us understand this by taking a simple example of bacterial chemotaxis. So let us first understand what is meant by chemotaxis. Chemotaxis. All right. So this was for the first time observed in late 19th century. Late 19th century. By a German botanist called Pfeffer, W. Pfeffer. He was a German scientist. German botanist. He for the first time showed, taking a classical example, what he observed, and see the keen observation of that person. What he observed when you take a bacterial suspension, you have a suspension where you have bacteria here, suspension. And when you suspend a capillary tube, and this capillary tube, it is filled with, let's say, sugar solution. Capillary tube, it has been filled with sugar solution. So what he found out is that he saw that, the bacteria are aggregating at the mouth of the capillary tube. Bacteria from the suspension, they start moving towards the mouth of the capillary tube. The capillary tube, please remember, is filled with sugar solution, right? So he found out that, he observed that, bacteria, they are moving towards the mouth of the capillary tube, which is filled with a sugar solution. Then he performed another experiment, and what he found out is, with the very same kind of a setting, you have bacterial suspension. Again, you have a capillary now. And this time this capillary is filled with another type of solution, let's say phenol solution. Here it was sugar, here it is phenol. And what he found out is that the bacteria start moving away. He observed that the bacteria are no longer aggregating at the mouth they are not moving towards the mouth, they are not aggregating towards the mouth of the capillary as he observed in case of capillary filled with sugar solution. When he filled the capillary with the phenol solution, he found out that the bacteria, they have a tendency, they try to run away from the mouth of the bacteria. So he then defined this directed movement. Please write down carefully. This is the definition, this directed movement of bacteria towards certain molecules, compounds, or substances, whatever word you want to use, and away from certain other is called as chemotaxis. This is being defined as chemotaxis. Okay, so please remember these bacteria, the bacterial solution suspension we are talking about, they are motile bacteria. They are motile bacteria. They are motile bacteria. Bacteria, they are motile by, they can rotate, they can move with the help of rotation caused by flagella. These are extracellular appendages which help bacteria move from one place to the other. So we are talking about motile bacteria, right? So a classical experiment long back, almost 125 years back, 19th century ke aakhir mein, towards the end of the 19th century, around 125 years back, a scientist by the name of Pfeffer, a German botanist, he made this very keen observation using very simple experiment that he has a dilute solution of bacteria, motile bacteria, and he dipped a capillary which is filled with sugar solution. In another experiment, similar setting, he has that bacterial suspension in which he dipped a capillary filled with phenol solution. And he then observed, in one case he observed that bacteria are aggregating towards the mouth of the capillary, whereas in another case he found that bacteria, they tend to run away from the mouth of the capillary. So he called this directed movement of bacteria towards certain class of compounds and away from certain other class as chemotaxis. And when bacteria move towards, these compounds are called as attractants. Attractants. And where bacteria move away, they are called as repellents. Okay, and we are talking of motile bacteria, where bacteria can, move. Bacteria show movement with the help of flagellar rotation, right? So this is what is called as chemotaxis. अगर आपको पूछा है what is chemotaxis, then you should be able to explain it in this particular way. Now, subsequently, let us understand first the biochemistry of rotation. Biochemistry of movement, let's say. Bacterial movement. Right? So as I said, motile bacteria, take an example of a gram-negative bacterium called E. coli. It can move because of the presence of flagella. These flagella are extracellular appendages. There are 6 of them in case of E. coli. There are 6 flagella and they are made up of a protein called flagellin. They are made up of a protein called flagellin. They are made up of flagellin subunits, right? And in terms of their structure, their diameter is around 15 nanometer diameter and length is around 10 micrometer. Length is 10 micrometer. Nanometer is 10 to the power minus 9th of a meter and micrometer is 10 to the power minus 6th of a meter. So their diameter is 15 nanometer and their length is around 10 micrometer and they are rotated by a miniaturized motor. Miniature motor, miniaturized motor, you can say. Miniature motor or miniaturized motor. Okay, something similar to the motor you see in your houses. Okay, it's a similar kind of a motor, but miniaturized, very small, nanoscale motor, miniaturized or miniature motor. Okay, and this motor, the way your motor requires, the motor in your house requires power, you provide it by electricity. This miniaturized motor is powered by proton motive force, PMF, proton motive force across the plasma membrane. Across the plasma membrane, right? So this flagella, which are made up of a protein called flagellin, subunits of protein called flagellin, 6 of them are there in E. coli, for example. They are typically 15 nanometer in diameter and 10 micrometer in length, and they are rotated by a miniaturized motor, which is located at the base of the flagella. There is a motor which is located at the base of the flagella. Okay. So what is the beauty of this motor? This motor, it's nanoscale, miniature motor. You can hardly see. You have to see it under a microscope, under a powerful microscope. This motor, it can not only rotate clockwise, it can rotate clockwise. इस direction में, it can rotate anti-clockwise. and it can spontaneously interconvert between the two types of rotation. Spontaneous. Okay, from clockwise to anti-clockwise, from anti-clockwise to clockwise, spontaneously it can change the direction. This is rather amazing. This is rather surprising. This is rather, a novel thing that this motor has this capacity that not it can rotate in both the direction. Not only that, it can interconvert. It can immediately shift from one direction to the other. Spontaneously, it can shift. This man-made motor, the motors that you see in your house, they do not have this kind of property. Please remember, this is a miniature motor. It can only be seen under a powerful microscope. Okay, but this motor, nature has given this kind of a characteristic that it can rotate in both the direction, spontaneously switch from one direction to the other direction. So typically what happens, these bacteria, they move in straight line. Straight line movement. Bacteria move in straight line for about 1 second. And in 1 second, they cover a distance of around 30 micrometer. They cover a distance of around 30 micrometer. The length of the bacterial cell is around 2 micrometer. That means 15 body length of distance is covered by bacteria using the flagellar rotation in about 1 second, 30 micrometer. And after 1 second, then they tumble. They change the course of their movement and they tumble by an angle of 60 degree. Okay, so they are, let's say, moving in this particular direction, right? For one second they will move in this direction, and then they will tumble by an angle of 60 degrees. So let's say, so this is angle of 60 degrees, and then again they will start moving in this direction. Then after 1 second they will tumble by an angle of 60 degree again, like this. Okay, so they move in a straight line for about a second, in which they cover a distance around 30 micrometer, which is 15 times their body length, right? And then they tumble by an angle of 60 degrees. Okay, tumbling. So they will change the course of their movement by tumbling, and the angle they make is around 60 degrees. Okay, so 60 degrees, then 60 degrees. So like that, they can make a circle like this. So circle, you have to rotate by 360 degrees. So in about 6 cycles, 6 tumbling, they will complete one circle like this. All right. So what determines the straight line movement or tumbling? Let me give you a thumb rule here, that when flagella flagellar rotation, when they move clockwise, okay, when the flagella they are rotating clockwise, then bacteria will tumble. And when the flagella they rotate anti-clockwise or counterclockwise, okay, bacteria will swim in straight line. Bacteria will move in or swim in straight line. So this is very important that you must remember. Okay, and this flagellar rotation, clockwise and anti-clockwise, it is done by the flagellar motor powered by proton motive force across the plasma membrane. That motor has the capacity that it can instantly, spontaneously interconvert between clockwise rotation and counterclockwise rotation. Okay, this is very peculiar about the flagellar motor. Your man-made motor, they do not show, very often they do not show this kind of a characteristic, right? Now let us understand about bacterial chemotaxis. What is the biochemistry of bacterial chemotaxis? So In 125 years, once it has been detected by Pfeffer, it was shown by Pfeffer that bacteria show directed movement towards certain class of molecules, certain class of compounds, which are called as attractants. Okay, and at the same time, bacteria can move away from certain other class of compounds that are called as repellents. Okay, so phenol, it is a repellent. So all those phenolic compounds, they will serve as a repellent. And there may be others also where bacteria do not like and bacteria tend to move away from them. So that is called, those compounds are called as repellents. So let us understand what is the biochemistry of bacterial chemotaxis. Biochemistry of bacterial chemotaxis, right? So what was found out is that the chemotaxis, bacterial chemotaxis, it begins with binding of attractants or repellents to membrane receptors. Okay, there are specific receptors on the membrane. So these molecules, whether they are attractants or repellents, what will they do? The first thing they must do is they should bind to these membrane receptors. And it was found out that in bacteria there are about 4 types of receptors. They are called as chemoreceptors. Or earlier they used to be called as methyl accepting chemotaxis protein. In short, MCP. So there are 4 types of MCPs, methyl accepting chemotaxis protein, right? And they're coded by 4 distinct genes. And what are the names of the genes? They're coded by 4 separate genes, right? And what are those genes? The names of the genes also you can write down. The genes are called as small s TSR, TAR, TRG, and TAP. These are the names of the gene. TSR, TAR, TRG, and TAP. These are the 4 genes which will code for 4 types of receptors. All right. So let me so you have TSR gene. It codes for MCP1, chemoreceptor 1. Then you have TAR gene, which codes for MCP2. Then you have TRG gene, which codes for MCP3. And then you have TAP gene, which codes for MCP4, methyl accepting chemotaxis protein. Okay, and where are these located? These chemoreceptors are located on, this is plasma membrane. This is lipid bilayer, plasma membrane. Right? Plasma membrane. In bacteria, in gram-negative bacteria, outside the plasma membrane, you have another membrane, another structure, right? An outer layer is there. And the space between the two, plasma membrane and the outer membrane, is called as periplasmic space. Right? Periplasmic space. And this is outer membrane. Right? And these chemoreceptors, there is a good division of work that TSR gene product or MCP1, it will identify, it will bind to serine and some repellents. Right? Similarly, you have some other repellents. Some other repellents, aspartate and maltose binding protein. They will bind to MCP2. Then galactose binding proteins and ribose binding protein. They will be binding to MCP3. And dipeptide binding protein, they will be binding to MCP4. Right? So please understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, this is, I'm talking about this is plasma membrane. So this is lipid bilayer. And located on the plasma membrane are these chemoreceptors. 4 types of chemoreceptors are there, right? This is periplasmic space. So there are 2 membranes. Plasma membrane is covered by an outer layer, outer membrane in case of gram-negative bacteria, and the space between the two is called as periplasmic space, right? So these attractants or repellents, whatever may be the compound, they will first be binding to the receptors, and I showed you which receptor will bind to which. MCP1 coded by TSR gene, it will be binding serine and some class of repellents. MCP2 coded by TAR gene will be binding to some other class of repellents, aspartate and maltose binding protein. MCP3, which is coded by TRG gene, will be binding to galactose binding protein and ribose binding protein, whereas MCP4, chemoreceptor 4, which is coded by TAP gene, will be binding to dipeptide binding. What is meant by this? Some attractants or repellents. Some attractants and repellents can bind directly. Can bind directly to the receptors, whereas some other attractants and repellents, they will first binding to certain binding proteins. For example, galactose binding protein, ribose binding protein, dipeptide binding protein, maltose binding protein. So please remember, some attractants and repellents can bind directly, whereas others, they will first be binding to these binding proteins, and these binding proteins are located here in the periplasmic space. So they will first bind to them, and then their complex will bind to the receptors. Okay, please remember, I am repeating once again. Okay, or if you want, I will draw it separately also. So what happens after binding? The signal is then transferred to a central processing unit, CPU. Central processing unit, which is made up of CHE gene products. So what is the job of this central processing unit? It will, analyze, process, integrate whatever signal it is getting, okay, and if required, amplify. All these things will be done by central processing unit. So the way we have in our computers, in our laptops. And then signal will be transmitted to flagella, and then flagella will move clockwise or it will move anti-clockwise. Flagella can move clockwise or it can move anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. Counterclockwise, CCW, और इसको CW बोलते हैं. Clockwise CW or counterclockwise CCW. So when they move clockwise, they tumble. And when they move counterclockwise, they move in straight line. Right? So this is, you can say, an overview of the bacterial chemotaxis. So you have 4 types of receptors located on the plasma membrane. They are coded by 4 different genes: TSR, TAR, TRG, and TAP. And then on the outer membrane, between the outer membrane and the plasma membrane, the space called as periplasmic space, you have certain binding proteins. Okay, some attractants and repellents can bind to the receptors directly, where others will require a pre-binding to these binding proteins, and after binding to them, they will be binding to the receptors. Once they are bound to the receptor, the signal will be transmitted to a central processing unit. This central processing unit, it is made up of CHE gene products. इसके बारे में हम कल समझेंगे. CHE gene products, CPU. What is the job of the central processing unit? It will analyze the signal. It will analyze the signal. It will process it. It will integrate, and if required, it will amplify. And then the signal will be transmitted to flagella. Flagella will move either CW clockwise, or they will move anti-clockwise, counterclockwise, depending upon. So for example, let's say if there is an attractant bound, and it was found out by central processing unit that it is an attractant, after analyzing, processing it, then what will happen? Flagella will move counterclockwise, and the bacteria will move in a straight line. If it is an attractant, it will move in a straight line. If a repellent is bound, it was analyzed, processed, then it will be transmitted to flagella, and the flagella will now, the flagellar motor will rotate the flagella in clockwise direction. So bacteria will tumble, and by tumbling, whenever it tumbles, it makes an angle of 60 degrees. So it will start moving away from the source. So it will start moving away from the source of that repellent, wherever the repellent is there, away from it. So this is an overview of the bacterial chemotaxis process. So let me just make it clear to you that some attractants or repellents can bind to receptors directly, whereas others, attractants and receptors, some others, this is class 1, and there is other class of attractants and repellents which will first bind to binding proteins, And then this complex together will be binding to the receptors. Right? And where do you get these binding proteins? These binding proteins are present in periplasmic space. Right? So I made it amply clear that some class of compounds will bind directly, where others can first bind to binding protein which are present in periplasmic space, and then they will be binding to the receptors. So that's all in this today's lecture.